Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. We're going to have a little discussion about POR15 and the process that I went through for putting it on the parts. This is my second day recording this. The first day there was a loud leaf blower in the background, so I figured I'd just re-record it on a day when it wasn't quite as noisy. I've also got some notes here, so I'm going to look down, so forgive me if I look away from the camera. But let's talk about the process. For me, this was a 3-day process. Most people will do it in one probably, but why was it for me a 3-day process? Well, the main issue was on the upper control arms. I have a problem with patience. I don't have much of it, and I got a little impatient with the upper control arms drilling out rivets on the ball joints. So I drilled the holes too wide in one hole each on each upper control arm. Drilled it too wide. So I had to go get a professional welder to repair it for me, so that I could put it in the ball joint properly and make sure it would stay secure. So it took a whole day for that to happen. So I did all the suspension parts except the upper control arms on day one. And then the second day I was able to clean and degrease and metal etch the upper control arms. And then another reason that made it a 3-day process was I let all the parts dry for 24 hours after I metal etched them. It puts a zinc phosphate coat. I think that's the right term. I'll put it below if it's not. But it coats it with something called zinc phosphate. And I wanted to give it 24 hours to dry. It needs to be bone dry before you apply the POR15. So I waited a whole day there. So that was 1 day for all of these parts, and then 1 day extra for letting the upper control arms dry. So it took me really 3 days to do this. So it may take you a little longer than 1 day to do it. So just keep that in mind. But let's talk about the kit. I bought 2 of these, and I don't know, I didn't know how much I would need. So I wanted to have 2 of them just in case. And I looked up the price yesterday. Today is November 10th, 2023. Yesterday I looked up the price at AutoZone. They were $29.50 or $29.49. So basically 30 bucks a piece. So $60 will get you these 2. And I think you get a lot for your money out of it as well. But let's talk about what comes in the kit. What comes in the kit is they say there's detailed directions, but there's not really that detailed directions. But that's okay. It's fairly simple to follow. But you've got the cleaner degreaser, right? And you've got the metal etch or metal prep, as they call it. You've got POR15. There's 4 ounces of POR15. Each of these is an 8-ounce bottle. So it's 8 ounces of cleaner degreaser, 8 ounces of metal prep, 4 ounces of POR15. Then you get a little foam brush that's just a piece of junk, but that's not POR15's fault. That's not the company that makes it. It's just, they're just little throwaway brushes and they fall apart easily. And then you get a 1-inch or 25.4 millimeter paintbrush with it. And you get a pair of gloves. And for what it's worth, I like buying the extra large gloves. They fit my hands nicely. They're a little loose, so I personally prefer that. The gloves that came in the kit were very tight on my hands, so I would say they're a large at best, maybe a medium, probably a large. I doubt a medium would fit on these mitts, but just keep that in mind for yourself. You may need a different size glove when you start this project. So anyway, that's what comes in the kit. And we'll talk about, there's a 6-pack kit of these that you can buy that's just POR15. That's 6 cans, 4 ounces per can, and in a little while we'll talk about why you may want to actually do that. You may want to buy that as opposed to buying a quart or a pint or a gallon or whatever. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So for the cleaner, they want you to mix it with hot water. So I put 16, they want you to use 4-to-1 ratio. So I use 16 ounces of water and 4 ounces of cleaner degreaser. That cleaned everything. That was perfect. I think the Chemical Guys orange degreaser, which I have here, will work as well. I used that as a test on the upper control arms the next day. The second day seemed to be just fine. So I think the cleaner degreaser that you choose to use is just fine. But what they give you, I will tell you that you'll only need half the bottle. So you'll have half a bottle laying around. So you get to keep a half a bottle, you know, or use it all. It doesn't matter. For the metal etch, you don't mix it with anything. You just want to put it directly on the part. And what I happen to have is one of these. It's a little half-height sprayer. You can probably get them for $1 wherever, or $2 maybe, from wherever you buy spray bottles, Walmart, Home Depot, the dollar store, Dollar Tree, Dollar General, whatever. But this was very helpful because, as you can see, it's the same size as the bottle and it screws right on the top. So it was very helpful to have one of these. So that's a hint for you. The cleaner degreaser, you're supposed to keep the part wet. I had a problem with that, but I think it was me and the choices that I made, and not the metal prep. The directions say you're supposed to keep the part wet for 20 minutes. And as you see me now, you are facing west. West is back over there. So when the sun rises, obviously it rises in the east. So when I started with the suspension parts, I started about 9 in the morning. And the sun was, you know, fairly high in the sky, and it's shining directly on this workbench. So, and it was also about 70, 75 that day. So I think that was the problem that I had keeping these things wet, was that it was warm and the sun was shining directly on it, and it was causing sublimation. So there's a tip for you. If you're going to do this in like a shaded area, like under a porch, maybe in a garage, or under a carport, or under tree cover. In the afternoons, as the sun reaches its zenith and starts to set, these trees behind of me give a shade over the yard. So when I was doing the upper control arms, I didn't have any problem at all keeping them wet for 20 minutes. So I'm pretty sure that it was my choice of the time of day that I did it, and being out in the sun. So it's another hint for you there. The brushes with the kit, like I said, I used this one, the foam brush, with keeping the parts wet. I would just wet the foam brush. Of course, I'd spray the parts, but I'd also saturate the brush, and then I would use the brush to wipe the parts, and that worked really well. But the brush falls apart. So you can see that, well, I don't know if you can really see, but the end has kind of come off. It's very jagged, and there's a little spatula right there. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's starting to come out. So this is just a little piece of junk, but it was good to help keep the parts wet. That's what I chose to use it for. Some people have used it to paint. I use the paintbrush to paint. And again, this is a 1-inch paintbrush, 25.4 millimeters that came with it. This was really good for getting in the small areas, so I would encourage you to use something smaller like this. The thing that irritated me about this, though, and again, it's not POR15's fault, this brush with the bristles that come on it, which, by the way, these were $1.58 at Lowe's. I needed to go get some more, which I'll talk about. But the whiskers on the brush will come off as you're painting, and they'll get stuck in the paint, and you have to pick them out. And sometimes you can't see all of them. So I have some of these little bristles in the paint, and it's quite obvious when you get up close and look at them. But I mean, I don't think anybody's ever going to be getting that close to it, unless it's going to be judged, and this isn't going to be a show car, so nobody's going to be judging it. But just like regular paint brushes, you know, if you paint with these things, the POR15 is going to dry, and the paintbrush is going to be useless after that. So I would encourage you to go get a couple more of these, because you have to let the POR15 when you paint it, you have to let it set, and it takes about, they say, between 4 to 6 hours. I let the suspension part set for 4 hours, and I let the upper control arms set for 3 hours, and they both look fantastic. So I don't really think 3-4 hours really matters. What matters the most, I think, is the humidity and the temperature that you're doing it in. So anyway, so I just have a couple of these. I'd use this for one coat, and then I'd toss it, and I'd use a clean one for the second coat. Just me. But save yourself some money. Like I said, it's $1.58 for these at Lowe's. So I bought some extras. So the POR15 itself. This little 4-ounce can went a long way. This 4-ounce can you're supposed to put a thin coat on everything. This little 4-ounce can put a thin coat on all the suspension parts, except the backside of the lower control arms. I didn't do those at the same time I did the front, because I felt like the part was too big and it was too unwieldy, and I would probably wind up taking some of the paint that I had just put on off. So I waited an extra day to do the back side, and there's no problem with that. But the POR15, it covered the top or the front of both the lower control arms. It covered the brake shields, it covered the brake hubs, it covered the brake spindles, it covered 4 extra brake parts. It also covered the 4 arms that hold the control arms onto the body itself, and it covered the front sway bar. So using thin coat, and there was just a little bit of paint left over in the can. Now, the next day I went to open the can, and it was solidified. So this is my point I mentioned earlier about the 6-pack of 4-ounce cans. I think that 4 ounces will go a long way, but if you open the can and you don't use it for a day, the contents of the can are probably going to solidify. So that's why I think it might be a good idea to buy a bunch of 4-ounce cans, so you only use 4 ounces at the time and the rest are sealed, so that you don't run into that same issue that I did. And the second can, I mentioned I bought 2 of these kits. The second can, I used about half of the second can, doing a second coat on everything, just to make sure everything was covered. So I had about half to, I don't know, 60%, 50%, 50% is half, 40% left in the other can. But these are useless now, they're solidified. So take that as you will. I think it's better to go in smaller increments so that you have more left over, you're not wasting any. Because I feel like if you opened a whole gallon and you didn't immediately pour it into another container to use like a paint, the paint mixer plastic jugs, or whatever you use, plastic cup or whatever, I think that you'd waste a lot of the POR15 if you did that. So that's my advice to you on that, is maybe buy the 6-pack of 4-ounce cans. It did get on my hands, it got on my arms, you can see right there, and I got some there. I got more on me than that, and when I saw it, I would immediately go and wash my hands, and it came right off. I had to use a little bit of abrasive soap to get it off, so I think you would be fine if you did that. Excuse me. But it's been about 3 days, and this doesn't look like it's really gone away at all. So it's probably going to take about a week or more for it to actually get off my skin. So that's a tip for you there. I bought a $13 laundry rack from the Dollar General store, and I use that to hang some of the parts from. I also have a clothesline in the basement, so I use that to hang some parts from, and that worked really well. So if you need something and you don't have it, 12 or 13 bucks, throwaway at Dollar General is a good deal, I think. Now, there were two companies that helped me with this initially. The first one, I decided I needed to get this stuff media blasted, was I took it to Kegs Blasting in Kernersville, North Carolina. Kegs Mobile Blasting. I'll put their link to their website in the details. They were excellent. Reasonable rates, all the suspension parts, and upper and lower control arms, $115. Done, out the door. So they were fantastic to use, so I'm going to go back to them when I take the rear suspension off. And I have some parts from when I was taking the front of the car apart too as well. So I'm going to take them and have them do that for me. And then the welding company that I used was Swink's Welding in Lexington, North Carolina. So if you're in the High Point, Greensboro, Winston-Salem area of North Carolina, Swink's Welding helped me with this. Now, welding like floor pans and things like that is not their deal, but heavier metal parts like the suspension parts, they can help you with it if there's anything that you need. So that's pretty much my hints and tips for this. I'm kind of proud of this. I feel like this is a step up in content for me, so I appreciate you watching. Oh, one last thing I wanted to mention for the brake shields. The brake shields, the closest that I could find to having them zinc coated, because 77 had these zinc coated with a pretty gold coating, was I found Krylon Fusion all-in-one paint and primer metallic gold. So I'm pleased with the way that those came out. I just sprayed it directly over the POR15. Didn't need any primer because obviously it's primer and paint together. And this came out fantastic. These were, I did this with 2 coats, and I'm very pleased with that. So I'll put those back on the car eventually. But yeah, thanks for joining me, and I hope that you got something out of this. And we'll see you down the road.